Right then, some thoughts the morning after the game at Ellis Park between South Africa and Australia. I feel privileged to have been there. It is a mecca of rugby. It's a stadium that holds so much history in its bones, described as the spiritual home of South African rugby. So just to go there and be part of another game there was really, really special. But I also feel privileged to have witnessed what is going to go down as one of Australia's most famous ever victories. An incredible comeback. Their first win at Ellis Park in over 60 years. First win on South African soil in 11. When you think about where Australia have been in the recent past and compare that to South Africa, the back-to-back world champions, what Joe Schmidt has managed to pull off with his team in this match is astounding, to be honest. And so there's lots to talk about on the positive side from Australia and where it went wrong from South Africa. You'll notice from my full-time video yesterday, I was kind of shell-shocked. I think most Wallaby fans and South African fans were shell-shocked as well. I couldn't make sense of what had happened. How could a team that were so dominant and 22-0 up after, 18 minutes and cruising, I was thinking it could be a 50-point win for South Africa at that stage. How did it turn around so dramatically? What happened? So I've had a chance to watch it again, and I do have some thoughts. I know you'll give me yours, and please do, in the chat down below. Have you watched it again? Have you let the game digest and worked out where it was won and lost? I'd be really interested to know. I watched the post-match press conference with Rassie Erasmus, and do you know what I really appreciate is the fact that he was just completely straight down the line. And I'm quoting Dr. Rassie on this one. They were dog shit. That's his words. And I love the fact that he actually used a bit of a cliche at one point in the post-match press conference. He said, he said all credit to Australia. And then he apologised for using a cliche, recognising that that's not what journalists, fans want, and that's not what a performance and a result like that demands. And he did give a bit of an insight into where he thought it went wrong. The breakdown battle, Australia got on top of South Africa. That was a momentum-shifting thing, I agree. The line-out was rubbish for South Africa and just fell to pieces and took away a platform. There were just some handling errors, and he talked about a lack of confidence in one or two players. He first and foremost said, you need to blame me and my coaching staff. This is on us, because he thought that they were ready and prepared. And to be fair, the way they started the game, you'd have to agree they were. They were doing everything right, and then it went so badly wrong. And that's where this game is really interesting to digest. And I've watched it again, and I've got a few thoughts. And again, just to flip, I've talked about the honesty of Rassie Erasmus. Australia, you need to keep Joe Schmidt. I mean, give him a blank check. Make all the issues that mean he has to leave the post, make him go away. Because he is a master tactician, and his team absolutely delivered in that game yesterday. And they did a few things really, really well in the comeback. What I really like about rugby is it's such a complicated sport, but actually when you bubble it down, it's also really, really simple. And Australia managed to win by doing a few simple things really, really well, which I'll come on to. In terms of the scale of the comeback, that was the biggest comeback in a match between two Tier 1 nations. I think I've got that stat right. It was one that Matthew Pearce, the commentator on SuperSport here in South Africa, he said it to me in the media room after the game. So Matthew, I apologise if I got the stat slightly wrong. But he was kicking himself that he didn't use it in the actual match. So I'll credit him now and just share it with you, because that is amazing. It reminded me a little bit of like Liverpool being 3-0 down. In fact, that came up in a conversation the other day with someone else. Anyway, Liverpool being 3-0 down at half-time against Inter Milan in the Champions League final, and then winning 4-3. And you're like, that can't happen. How did that happen? Only this was like Australia not winning 4-3. The equivalent would be them winning 5 or 6-3. Such an astounding turnaround to come back and then win by 16 points. What happened? I think it's great for world rugby as a whole that Australia have got their mojo. And I think in light of the All Blacks against Argentina game in Cordoba, you see what New Zealand managed to do to win that match. Just go to the fundamental maul, scrum, tight game. And that was the thing that surprised me most about this match when you look back at it. South Africa never went back to the core DNA of what is... I mean, this was the spiritual home of South African rugby at Ellis Park. The DNA of South African rugby, scrum, maul, batter your opponents into submission. When I think about South Africa and the way they play, and I'm an Englishman that's watched my team be on the receiving end of this in big, big matches. South Africa, I always think of them like a boa constrictor. They will squeeze. And every time you take a breath in, they'll squeeze a little bit more. And at some point, the lights go out. It could be in the 50th minute, 60th minute, it could be in the 79th minute. But at some point, the build-up of pressure over a game, the relentless physicality, the constant scrummaging, mauling, pressure kick game, at some point, that is it's gonna be lights out. And South Africa never went back to that. And it's easy to criticise, saying, oh, they played too much. I've seen a lot of that criticism. Oh, they played too much rugby. They're trying too much with the attack. Look at the first 18 minutes. They were shredding Australia. The defence was blitzing off the line, smashing them, getting Australians caught in possession, walloping them behind the gain line, winning penalties, winning territory, going from side to side, different threats. There were so many different live running options that the Australian defence were looking at the picture and not knowing where the ball was going and who they should take. And as a result, the holes were appearing to the right, to the left. Esterhuizen, Khaleesi, those tries, Arendse with the first try. It was outstanding rugby. Lou Diago was at first receiver, connecting really well with Marnie Libok. And they were stretching Australia and then punching through the middle. Etzebeth running hard down the middle. Peter Steph du Toit, Khaleesi on the edges. It looked awesome, which makes the turnaround all the more remarkable. So what did change? Well, I think there was a few moments, and actually Rassie Erasmus picked up on this in the press conference. He said Marco van Staden going off disrupted, and it was an HIA, so he came back on, but it disrupted the breakdown. And actually, when you watch the game back, it was just after South Africa had scored their third try, so they're 22-0 up, and then Marco van Staden goes off with his HIA, and immediately Fraser McWright wins a turnover penalty in what became a number of repeated breakdown penalties, which Australia won, and that led to the Dylan Peach try. And just the fact that Van Staden wasn't there, and then Khaleesi, I don't think that was a tactical replacement when Khaleesi went off after 45 minutes. I think that was a bit of a knock. He'd had his knee strapped up when he scored his try, or just after on the Dylan Peach tackle. But that was a bit of a momentum shift. The breakdown threat from South Africa and taking care of their own business was gone and off the field. And suddenly McWright, Tom Hooper started making really significant interventions there. Equally, it has to be said, South Africa were the authors of their own downfall, because there was many, many times in that game. I made a note of a few of them. So, I mean, actually, I just want to say, by the way, Suali'i and Ikitau on that Dylan Peach try. I mean, chef's kiss. Suali'i just like a little netball pass over the top, basketball skills. Ikitau with the 1-2 with James O'Connor, was so good. But anyway, 31 minutes, so it's 22-5 at this point. South Africa get territory, and they're 5 metres away from Australia's line. They give away a penalty for crossing. Esterhuizen had made a break. So South Africa didn't help themselves. And remember that analogy I gave, that they're like a boa constrictor. This is like a boa constrictor, squeezing, and then just going, actually, I'm just going to let you go and I'll start again. And that's what it felt like in this period between 22-0 up and half-time. They just released the pressure so easily from knock-ons, from avoidable penalties, and quite often they were close to Australia's line. And then 35 minutes, it was exactly the same. Really nice approach play from South Africa, and they gave away a breakdown penalty 5 metres out, let the pressure valve off. And these easy outs is what kept Australia in the game. Honestly, when you watch it back, the game could have, many people thought the game was done after 18 minutes and 22-0. The game could well have been done at half-time if South Africa had just been a little bit tidier, although you do have to give credit to Australia for their breakdown work. There was a load of incidents like that in the late part of the first half, and then the second half came out, and that try for Harry Wilson was just too easy. Brilliant skill. Angus Bell, no look pass, looking behind him, hits it flat, completely foxes Oxenche. Harry Wilson runs straight through a hole. Hint of a forward pass, I'm fine with it being given. Let's say it was flat, and try scored. Nick Frost was just cleaning out South Africa's line out. You do not expect that whatsoever. And that's even after Franco Mostert came on. And he's a guy you sort of think he'll sort the line out if there was any issues. But I don't know what the breakdown in communication is there. But Australia also did it to the British and Irish Lions. So I'm going to give Nick Frost, Jeremy Williams and Jeff Parling, I'm going to give them the credit because it's clearly something that they've worked very, very hard on and it showed. So that made it 22-12. At this point, the Boks win a scrum penalty, go for the corner. Eben Etzebeth with a massive carry. They're 2 metres from the Australia line. Tom Hooper, world-class breakdown, Jackal. But again, had Khaleesi and Van Staden been on the pitch, would that dynamic have changed a little bit? Do they need that Jackal option off the bench? I know Quacker Smith came on. It's just it's going to be an interesting one in terms of selection. But it was immense that the ability of the Wallabies to just stay in the game and fight when they could easily have, just one more try and probably the result goes a different way at this point. So they managed to hang in. And then 55 minutes, really good approach play. South Africa are in the Australia 22 again. Willemse knocks on 10 metres out. It was just a bad option. If you want to, because what happened, if you remember, it's right on the right-hand touchline, 5-10 metres out. Grant Williams gives a one-out pass to Damian Willemse, who just gets smashed by the Australian defence. If you want to run one out from a breakdown on slow ball, fine, but you do it with Etzebeth or Oxenche. You don't do it with Willemse. And that was just a bad option, compounded by the fact, really good tackle, compounded by the fact that it was just a really bad option from Manie Libbok on the Joseph Suaalii interception and try. Just a poor option and a bit of an own goal. Although that try and the others which followed were all scored from deep. And just to flip it to Australia and what they did so well and what managed to change is they just got the ball to the edge and they did the simple things really well. Their back line stayed really deep, so the option was always there for the long miss pass to the edge. And South Africa were blitzing their defence through the middle. They were getting a bit misaligned. I think it was on the Jorgensen try. South Africa had the numbers. I'll have to do a video on this at some point. They had the numbers, but their spacings were all wrong. So the ball could just float over the top to Jorgensen. Amazing footwork, and he's in. But it was just a bad option from Libbok. But it was a reward for Australia being brave enough to attack from inside their own 22. And this is why people that criticise kicking in rugby need to give their head a wobble. Because these tries from Australia, it's a weird thing to say because they were all running tries from deep. But the reason Australia scored these tries is because of the threat of kicking in rugby. The threat of kicking in rugby means that you have to drop players into the backfield, or you have to consider dropping players into the backfield, which South Africa did. And what happens when you drop players into the backfield? There's space on the edge. And Australia had the space, but they had the skills and the execution and the pace to actually take advantage of that space on the edges. And I applaud the bravery of the Wallabies and the tactical nous of Joe Schmidt. And in Tom Wright, that try he scored, wow. I know it was was it Tom Wright made the break? Yeah, Tom Wright made the break and he absolutely did Kanan Moody and Jesse Creel and then gave the ball to Harry Wilson for the try. It was the Wilson try, but Tom Wright, that was elite. And then Jorgensen floated past over the top. He's got a lot of work to do. But Max Jorgensen, Joseph Suaalii, one of the best young players in the world, gets a lot of headlines. Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu, no doubt one of the best players in the world, gets a lot of headlines, my favourite radio station as well. And who else? Wallace Satiti. Max Jorgensen might be the best of the lot. He might be the best of the lot. He is 21 years of age and is a rare and very special talent. And his try was unreal. He turned Manie Libbok inside out. Oh yeah, and then it was Tom Wright, wasn't it? Tom Wright did Willemse down the touchline for the final try. I might have got the tries in the wrong order, but you get the idea. But yeah, that's where it changed for me. South Africa did not go back to their core DNA. Maul, scrum, tight game, squeezing teams. They played it loose and then weren't able to keep it tidy at breakdown time, letting the pressure valve off. And Australia, fair play, took the edges, took the chances, kept the depth. And I've got such a good back line. And James O'Connor, the redemption arc is there. Nick White was doing it again, and Tate McDermott came off the bench. But Ikitau and Suoliti are class. And that back three, Tom Wright and Jorgensen in particular, were outstanding. So, yeah, that one's going to hurt. And there will be a reaction in Cape Town, which I'm sure the Wallabies are prepared for. I think Taniela Tupou looked like he was hobbling on his calf perhaps again. Hopefully he can be fit for next week. Harry Wilson didn't look in a good way, so he might be out. Will Rob Valentini be back? And for South Africa, what changes do they make? That'll certainly be a video I do after this one. I'll have some player ratings. I'll have a team of the week for the Rugby Championship. And I will most certainly be looking at what the selection will be like for this coming weekend. Those are just some thoughts. Let me know yours, and I will see you on the next video.